I will just do you a favor and do the presentation in English because it's kind of late in the afternoon and you all look very relaxed in this cinema. So I think if I start a presentation in Danish, I will completely just lose all of you. So I'll do it in English. But anyway, my name is Runa. I come from a government development unit called MindLab. And I will give you in the next only half an hour a presentation of how we are working within government and how we are working specifically with design methods to develop the Danish welfare system. So I will kind of try to give you the backstage story of how you work with design in government. So anyway, I will give you the story of how you get from a culture where you're used to working in a line from A to B with lots of papers and documentation and analysis to like a design-based approach where you experiment and where you prototype and where you work with unfinished solution and try it out again until you find a way of developing a new service or a new policy. Just start with a short quote from our permanent secretary in the Ministry of Business and Growth. He says that it's time to try to rethink the way we deal with change and value creation in these turbulent times, and it is a good idea to look closely at what design in practice has to offer. He is actually also in the board of MindLab, and he's one of the top civil servants in Denmark. And I think this quote kind of shows that in Denmark, at least, the value of design has become more and more apparent to even the top government civil servants. So anyway, just a few notes about what MindLab is. We are purely funded by 3 ministries, meaning that we are like a public think tank, public development unit, and we are owned by 3 ministries: Ministry of Business and Economic and Business, it's called, and Ministry of Employment. And just from the last month, we've been owned also by the Ministry of Education and Youth. This means that we actually have the possibility to work with development from within, because I am myself a civil servant. So we're not like a consultancy agency that are outside the government. We are within the institutions. MindLab is also a physical space. This is just a photo of our office, not because we think that a different approach or a different way of thinking can only be done by looking different, but we believe that if you have to work differently, you can also kind of show it in the physical way. So when you enter MindLab, you would immediately feel that this is a different office, this is a different spirit and a different atmosphere. This is very different from all the offices that are around us. MindLab, we are about 10 to 12 people, so it's not a lot, and we are mixed. We have mixed backgrounds. We have expertise within design. We have 2 designers with us. We have expertise within social research, meaning that we know how to go out and talk to the end users and the citizens. We have anthropologists with us, sociologists, and we also have people with us that know how the system works, that know how the system that we're part of works. So we have people that are trained in for public administration. And I think the reason why we are so many different types of people in MindLab is that we think if you have to work with creativity and new ideas, you also have to share your knowledge and share your perspective, because that is the way that actually new things come up. So we always work 2 people on the project, and we always try to challenge each other when we solve something. What is not here actually is that we also have researchers among us. We had 3 business PhDs that has actually just been finished, and now we have 1 researcher who is doing a knowledge program as a part of MindLab. So we also have a basis within university at MindLab. So what's this all about? MindLab is a way we try to develop new ideas for services or for policy, And we do it with the perspective at two things. One thing is that we focus on the end user. We focus on the people on the street that actually has to change behavior or has to receive help. This means that every time we start a project, we would have some kind of approach to the end user, talk to them, interview them, and find out what is their daily life, what does it look like. So we always research and investigate the people that actually has to change behavior. That's one part of what we do. The other part is that, as you saw before, we are owned by 3 ministries, and that is no coincidence, because in Denmark, at least, one of the huge problems when you have to develop something new is that you think of a problem just within one silo. So the purpose of MindLab is also to help the ministry and the agencies to be better to think cross-sector. So these are the two main focus areas of MindLab's work. And very briefly, in every project, we have 3 phases. First, we always go out, as I said, to try to find out what's actually going on out there. How are the users living, and what are their main problem? This is one of my colleagues who is interviewing and filming a farmer and trying to be more clever about what is it like to have so much regulation, and how can the government make regulation of farmers more smart. So he's actually spending a day or 2 together with the farmer and finding out what is the problem here. When we have gained the knowledge, we take it back to MindLab, and we collect the civil servants that are dedicated to the projects. So we work with the workshops, with the facilitations of new ideas, and we bring the stories from the real world into the civil servants and make them work with the stories and create new ideas. So this is phase 2, kind of we have the knowledge, and then we make the civil servants convert them into new ideas or new frameworks. And the third phase is that we work very much with prototypes, meaning that when we have the new ideas, we don't just finish them and then say, this is it. We make a prototype of a new, maybe unfinished new solution, take it back to the people that has to use it, maybe co-create it together with the civil servants. And we do it like lots of iterations. And I think this is very important. It's specifically today as we're talking about design, because this is something that designers are really good at. Making unfinished solutions that you can actually work together on, and keep the experimentation going on as the process are getting more and more finished. And it's maybe sound like obvious. You have to do that when you solve complex problems. You have to experiment. But within the culture that I work in government, it's an extremely new way of working. I mean, it takes lots and lots of courage to take unfinished solutions out and talk to the end user about them and go back and forth, because you're used to working in a culture of 0 errors, and we actually say that they should work complete opposite. They should make lots of errors, and we should go back and forth as many times as we can. So this is kind of the 3 phases that we always go through in a MindLab project. So why is it that design is interesting in connection with the wicked problems that we work with? We work with climate change, we work with taxation, we work with unemployment. I mean, huge complex problems. Why is it that design has anything to offer in this perspective? One of the perspective, and actually I think it's very interesting that MindLab has been working like this for 6 years, and we've existed for 10 years. And the last 3 or 4 years, we have just got so much attention, also for the design perspective, because we haven't got the money. So we just have to think differently. And if we haven't got the money to make extremely complex solutions that doesn't work at all, we have to rethink the way we do it. We have to be have more courage and more braveness, and actually experiment more, and understand the context that the new solution is going to work in, instead of just kind of try in your own office. So one of the things is that it might be a way of solving some of the enormous amount of resources that we spend on solution that doesn't work at all. So the way I see it, I am not a trained designer myself. I studied media science and I've worked with user-centered innovation my whole career. But when I work together with designers, and I do that in all my projects, what I see that designers can do is that they actually can go more emotional to the task. They go more intuitive. They do rapid prototyping. They experiment. They think of what is it actually for kind of impact that we want to achieve instead of thinking in causality. So this is very different to the way that you used to work within government, where you used to work with analysis, you used to work rational and logical. You used to work like a linear. I think that was you said, Laura, that you work very linear, just with a problem getting from A to B to C. We work in a circle, going back and forth all the time. So I think what designers can really offer is that you can offer a way of approaching a very complex problem in an extremely concrete way. Meaning that you're turning the complex problem into some kind of, maybe just a prototype, maybe a scenario, maybe a storyboard for a new solution. And this is very valuable in government, but also very difficult because it's just the extreme opposite way of what you're used to and how you used to work. So maybe design can be the answer to that. We just today has extremely high cost within society for welfare, and we just have to get more outcomes out of lower cost, and we just have to rethink the way that we just cut down expenses and just think that if we run faster, we will solve it. We say it's not the case. You just have to rethink the way that you frame it. And maybe you can actually get to solutions that actually matters, that actually help the people that you want to help. So I just want to give you like a few cases of how we work with design. And they are really different. And also show you a kind of the wide perspective of how we're working with design at MindLab. One of the cases is that Denmark had the presidency of the EU a year ago. And the Ministry of Economic and Business Affairs wanted MindLab's help to carry out an EU Council meeting. The council meeting was about how can you actually make EU be better at doing trades at the internet, using the internet for business. And they asked MindLab both to kind of help with the framing and also to help with doing the meeting more inspiring. And I think they had two purposes with asking MindLab. One of them was that they wanted to show that they could redo a meeting experience, which is kind of a very a stiff way of working. So they wanted MindLab's help for using design to reframe a meeting experience. And they also want our help to get what they experiment is that some of the meetings, they don't really come out to anything. So they wanted also our help to kind of push the solution. So what we did was that we worked with three like principles for the EU meeting, and one of them was that we wanted to show the digital agenda. So what we did was that we made everything digital. We had all the people having there were no papers at all present. This is the ministry actually you see here together with the other countries that were representative. So we did a basic tool was that we said we should show it, don't tell it. So we made a total meeting experience with only digital solutions in the meeting. What we also did was that we focused on the end user, trying to create empathy, trying to make the people actually relate to the topic. So we went out and we talked to several users who had really huge difficulties to do business on the internet, and they told their own personal story of what it was like for them. And what actually happened to the meeting was that we made, I think, 6 or 7 short films, that they became a very concrete reference point of view for the meeting participants. So that it was not just an abstract story about it's difficult to do business on the internet. We had this very concrete, specific stories about what does it matter and what does it look like for him and her. So this was part of the story. The end user was part of the story. Another thing we found out when we got to do the meeting preparation was that, I don't know if you've ever tried to be in like a high level meeting, but you would just receive an enormous amount of papers, and you would receive an enormous amount of bars and numbers and figures that you just flip through and you don't really kind of relate to them, but they would be figures and numbers would always be like the basis of the discussion. But no one really rethought, how can we actually make people relate to the figures and numbers? So what we did was that we did a cooperation with the Danish Design School, and we said to them, can you help us to kind of redesign these figures so that they can become relatable and just become intuitively understandable? So this it reminded me kind of, I don't know if you have the program here in Sweden, the X Factor program, where you kind of select people. It was kind of the same phase, because a lot of students, they had all the different presentations, and we just have to choose 3 that could be used to the EU meeting. And this was one of them that we choose. This is a chart showing all the EU countries. Every star is an EU country. And I'll show you the next one. You can see they have a certain length. So if it's very short, it means that you don't use the internet very much to business. And if it's very long, it shows that you use it a lot. And when our colleagues in the ministry, they first saw it, they got kind of tense, because they said, no, we cannot show it, because maybe the people that have a very short star would be kind of offended. So we had also a second side of it, showing the potential on the other side. So meaning that if you were very short of how much you use the internet today, you had lots of potential in the future for using it, which was a very elegant way, I think, of kind of pleasing everybody. And what also happened was that we had it at the Bella Center in Copenhagen, this model, and it just drew an enormous attention. People would come first just out of curiosity. What is this? What does it mean? And then they kind of studied, and of course wanted to find their own country, etc. But all of a sudden, figures and numbers became relatable, something that you could talk to, something that you could actually be part of the discussion in a real engaging way. So this was just like one element of showing that design can actually make things that are abstract, that are difficult to relate to, also very funny. This is the minister and the deputy chief standing in front of it, and really wanted to get photographed with it because it was just so illustrating. So this is just one example of how you can use design as a framework. Also, the last one was that we want to make a total meeting experiment. So we had graphic designers do this was. All the people had to have dinner together. So this is showing how it looked when they had dinner together, and we used the what's it called, aquarelle, the way of painting with watercolor instead of this digital. It's difficult to explain in English. Anyway, the point was that we took all the frame around the meeting and worked with it. And one of the things we did was also to make them feel welcome in the meeting, and also serving Nordic dinner, etc. So this is just a very low-key way of using design, and I can tell you of one more, which is completely different, which was an extremely difficult case actually. In Denmark, when you're opening a new business. All businesses in Denmark has to choose a code telling what kind of business that you work with. I don't know if you have the same in Sweden. I bet you have, because you have the statistic has to have some kind of overview of how many different businesses do we have here in Denmark. Anyway, it's a very, very tiny detail of opening a business is to have this code. And the reason why MindLab started to work with it was that it just had this enormous potential for conflict, and also enormous potential for errors. And I think the reason why I want to tell you today is that this little detail actually shows some of the complexity that we work with within the system. For instance, this code there is errors in 30% of it, which is quite a lot. And this is not very good for the statistics, because of course they want to know how many different companies there are of different kinds. So the statistics are unhappy. Ministry of Taxation are also unhappy, because when they go and control businesses in Denmark, most people really want to pay the right amount of taxes to the right time. But some businesses really doesn't want to pay the right amount of taxes. They try to cheat, right? So the Ministry of Taxation, they want to target their control to the kind of businesses that try to cheat. And they use these code as basis of control of who they should go and control. So if there's error in almost half of them, they will come out and control people that should really not be controlled, and they use an enormous amount of money to that. The business authority, they are also unhappy, because they get just so many phone calls and people showing up physically because they cannot find the right code. The system is just completely nonsense to the user. So they spend an enormous amount of time helping people in the phone. And in Denmark, at least, we try to make the public sector more digital, because we do not have time to help people in the phone. So they were really, the business authority really wanted a new solution, because they wanted people to just do a self-service solution instead of calling them. So this small piece of error just had an enormous consequence. What we found out was that the user, they could not at all understand the system, because when you start up and if you are, for instance, if you work as a window polisher and you type window polisher in the system, it will say, I cannot find you, because in the system it's called window washer. So you have to use the exact term, the system term, or else you would just get an error. So so it was just extremely not very friendly to the user, this self-service solution. So what we did at MindLab was that we started to design a new process. And one of the first things was that we used visual tools to kind of illustrate for the civil servants how many different people are actually involved in this process, and where could the possibility of help be here. We used drawers, we used visual tools, we used like a methods we call like a service design. So we draw what does it look like today, and how many different agencies are actually involved if a business cannot find the right code. So this was kind of the first step where you used design as a visual tool. We also used the empathy, the end user's perspective. We did out and talked to some of the businesses that had errors, and we made them tell the story. So this is one story actually this is just actually 3 stories in one. But one of the stories, if you find one of the lines in the green color, you can see a story of a person who actually get involved with 3 different agencies during her journey to get the right code. She talks to the business authorities, she talks to Ministry of Taxation, she actually drives to Ministry of Taxation to get help. So we used the end user's perspective and story to make the civil servants understand how they could do it better. And what we also found out was that we of course needed a new digital solution that used the end user's language, but we also need a new system for the backstage, for the people that work within the system, because today they couldn't work together at all, and they just kept on putting the users back and forth from line to line. This week, they just launched a new solution that both had a new digital solution with the words that you actually use as a business owner, and that is much more easy to grasp, and also with a solution to the backstage system, so that the ministries can work better together and work cross-sector. We hope, at least we did a business case for it, and we hope that it will save quite a lot of time both for the system and for the end user, and hopefully also get less errors, the new solution. So I think that would be it. Yeah, I thought that I could tell you much more, you can see. But anyway, we have a web page with lots of cases on it where you can visit. We also have a blog where we write different kind of approaches. It would also kind of show how many different people we are at MindLab. So some people write about design, some people write about public service culture. And we also have, in case you understand a little Danish, which I think you might do, we have this web page with only methods to do user-centered innovation. It's called the Innovation Guide, DK. You can see a link from our web, but it's in Danish. But it should be kind of easy to use with more than 30 different methods and also links to documents that can help you through the process. So yeah, I think that's it.